Greetings. I'm Brother Judah from the Nazarene Messianic Party, the NMP. And I'd like to welcome you all to the NMP Vanguard News. Today, we're going to investigate further into the immigrants. And we want to analyze immigrants and FBA'S, what they don't want you to know. Now, when we're talking about FBA'S, we're talking about an acronym that applies to foundational Black Americans. And so we want to look at this a bit because there appears to be a feud arising between immigrants, probably more specifically undocumented, and the people who are already citizens here. And we want to investigate this a bit to put it in perspective, to not fall into the trap of the feuding between immigrants and so-called foundational Black Americans. Bear with me a moment before we get into this. All right. Let's analyze this a bit. And we want to look into immigration. I know people may argue a bit between who are migrants and those who are immigrants. If you just analyze borders in particular, saying this is the U.S. border, this is the Canadian border, Mexican border, France border, thus and such, thus and such. Yes, we have the context of the immigrant. But even within the states themselves, for example, in the United States, migrants also play the same role, especially migrants who was migrating from the South to the North. In principle, they fulfill the same role. So let's analyze this and look at what is not only happening in the United States, but what is also happening in other parts of the world. Namely, I just want to bring out a couple of clips from the UK because they're using familiar language and they appear to have somewhat of the same issue. And some of the same language as far as here, they're not necessarily talking about illegal migrants. They're talking about those who are seeking asylum. And yet and still, those who are seeking asylum doesn't fall into the category of legal citizens. But I want us to analyze this and consider looking beyond ethnicity, looking beyond the titles. But I want us to consider and look at the role or how the migrants or immigrants in particular are used as pawns. They're used as pawns inside of the society of capitalism. And their usage is behind the propaganda. They're used as dividers. They pit the people against each other. It reminds me of an account I was reading about lynching in America. And lynching in America, they said, rose during economic downturns. And further research will prove that whenever there was an economic downturn, not because there was a scarcity of resources, but there was a compromising in profits. That's why during the Great Depressions, you had food being destroyed, you had cattle being destroyed, you had food in the fields left there to rot. Even in the 80s and 90s, and to be fair, even today, you still have a certain amount of food to be destroyed because of the market. You have more housing that's empty than the recorded homeless people that is in this nation. So a critique of the society must be had. So we're going to look at the migration aspect first. And let's get into first the mentality that those who sit in seats of power, the congressmen, the mentality of their bosses. So the congressmen are put in place because you have people who sit in seats of power who put congressmen there because of the lack of participation of the population in America. Very few people participate in the democratic process. They have been discouraged, but that's another subject. So since they are discouraged and there's not much resistance, those who own the factories, those who own the resources, they put their people in Congress. And since this isn't just an American phenomenon, but this is a phenomenon that happens all over the world where there are class hierarchies. And so what we find is that an analysis, a psychoanalysis of the people in second and so-called third world countries, it's studied, right? And I want to give you an example of a guy who's going to share with us the mentality of what we will find in Immigrants. All right. Now listen carefully to what he's explaining here.
Another one of my homies, like he said it, like, I don't understand some of these situations. Like, we were all presented with the same opportunity to work a triple shift. You didn't want to take it. I took it. And now you're mad at me that I'm taking your position. I'm like, bro, you didn't want to take it, but I took it because I understand this is what I have to do to move to like, so you can't be entitled and at the same time be upset that the system is against you. You feel me? And I think this is one of the reasons, like, and this is going to sound so uncompassionate, but I promise you, I say this because I am compassionate and I know I don't know all the details, but by the world standards, and I'm not saying there's poverty, there's disadvantage here, but you're talking to a brother who's coming from a worse form of poverty than you can even ever imagine. And so it's relative at some point. So what is oppression for you is opportunity for the other.
Now, that's important. What he said was fully honest. You can't hold that against him. But it's something that those who sit in seats of power all over the world know. And that's why it is rumored that Jay Gold, the former banker, he argued that he can take one half of the poor to kill the other half. So this resource, this human resource in second and third world countries. Let's examine. The brother didn't say exactly where he come from, but let's go, for example, into an analysis that was given by Kwame Nkrumah when he, back in the 60s, when he was understanding the development or learning about the development of imperialism. And so he explained what imperialism, how it is built and what imperialism seeks to obtain. Now, in this text here, it's called Revolutionary Path by Kwame Nkrumah, page 34, Revolutionary Path by Kwame Nkrumah. On page 34, he argues this. He said, those colonies which are exploited by the imperialist primarily as resources of raw materials and cheap labor, as spheres for export of capital, and as markets for their manufactured goods and commodities. Right. Okay. That's what happens. The capitalists manufacture their goods. They take these goods and they sell them to the colonies, whether it's Africa and South America or Asia. These colonies are undermined because these new goods that's being manufactured by the Americans from their resources, often from the resources of the colonies, is sold back to them, yet at a cheap price, what undermines the entrepreneurs in the said colonies. Okay. And this is an issue. So this is a whole nother topic that Kwame Nkrumah is bringing up when he's explaining how imperialists use the colonies also as markets. They use them as markets for their manufactured goods. But what I want to look at is the colonies, which are exploited by the imperialists primarily as resources of raw materials. So if you take in the colonies' resources, what happens? Let's go. I want to show you something here in the world. This is Oakland. You can find this write-up on www.oaklandinstitute.org. www.oaklandinstitute.org. And this is their write-up on Our Land, Our Business. World Bank's Bad Business in Kenya. Now, most high willing, we're going to address more of the political climate throughout the world. But I just chose Kenya for today to put this in context of what Kwame Nkrumah is describing and what our friend here in this clip was describing. He said, we have come from a world where oppression for you is opportunity for us. Why? Because their conditions are even more so deplorable. Why? It's not because their countries are poor. It's because their countries are overexploited. Now, here's from the write-up from between 2014, 2015, Kenya. And they're going as far back as 2008. It says in 2008, the World Bank's Doing Business program named Kenya one of its top 10 reformers, after the country had implemented a number of pro-business reforms. The bank and Kenyan government have a history of working together to overhaul Kenya's economy through programs that are leading to land grabbing and corporatization of agriculture. So the corporatization, or the corporations taking over agriculture. Land grabbing in Kenya. Well, people live on this land. Now watch this. The influx of foreign direct investment, FDIs, in the country grew from 729 million to 3.53 billion between 2007 and 2013, and has fueled the government's swift acquisition of land to sell to overseas firms, creating land conflicts and dispossessing thousands of families of their ancestral homes. Well, when you dispossess them of their ancestral homes, what happens is that they go further into poverty. Their land is exploited. They're dispossessed of their access to resources for survival, and they're driven into extreme poverty. Now, we can name a country in Asia, Africa, South America, and we'll find this same phenomenon taking place. What we want to do is analyze why so many people are immigrating. We must understand why. And then once we understand why, we must also analyze it critically, critique it, and see if these people are the real problem. Or is the real problem beyond them? is the real problem imperialist countries are primarily using the colonies, because now we have neocolonialism where they're dominated by the world banks, no longer cannons and bayonets. These colonies are the primary sources of raw materials and cheap labor. So Kwame Nkrumah, he argues that imperialism is the most degrading exploitation and the most inhumane oppression of millions of peoples. Now we're putting this guy into play. Listen to him carefully.
Another one of my homies, like he said it, like, I don't understand some of these situations. Like, we were all presented with the same opportunity to work a triple shift. You didn't want to take it. I took it. And now you're mad at me that I'm taking your position. Like, bro, you didn't want to take it. But I took it because I understand this is what I have to do to move to the, like, so you can't be entitled and at the same time be upset that the system is against you. You feel me? And I think this is one of the reasons, like, and this is going to sound so uncompassionate, but I promise you, I say this because I am compassionate and I know I don't know all the details, but by the world standards, and I'm not saying there's poverty, there's disadvantage here, but you're talking to a brother who's coming from a worse form of poverty than you can even ever imagine. And so it's relative at some point. So what is oppression for you is opportunity for the other.
The brother is absolutely right. He's being absolutely honest. And it takes us to understand who is the root cause of the oppression in the second and third world countries. What is exactly the real cause of the oppression and the penny pinching and this false scarcity of resources that we experience in the developed countries? Who's holding the bag? Who's holding the money bag? This is what we must examine. How and what the resources are being distributed. Who's distributing them? How are they being distributed? And according to what mode of production, or should I say, according to what policies are in place that causes the resources to be distributed in such a manner? Now, immigrants move to this country, UK, Canada, France. They're looking to feed their families. They're looking, if you interview them, they say, for a better life. For what some would say, a better life. Now, look at this. Same thing. So it's not just a Donald Trump thing. It's not just an American thing. Let's go over to the UK.
The government is spying on you and lying to you. Last week, the Home Office strictly told GB News there would be no migrants housed at the Britannia Hotel in London's Canary Wharf.
One of my producers here called the Home Office to check in because we, like many other people, were seeing social media posts of people at this hotel, and the rumours were that it was going to be used as a migrant hotel. And they basically categorically denied it to her. And then now it turns out that they are going to use it as an overflow facility for a migrant processing centre, which makes you wonder, why can't they just be honest with you?
Yeah, all right then. Surely we can trust the government, right? After all, it's their first priority to make sure British people, you and me, are safe. Well, take a look at this. This is the scene from the Britannia last night, where hundreds of small boat migrants were bussed into the hotel under the cover of darkness. And let's take a good look at the clientele, shall we? Men, all fighting age men, not a woman or child in sight. The time was a...
Now, this is the UK, and this was the same propaganda that was going on in the US, that the immigrants who were coming in were of all male fighting age. Well, any type of migration, you're normally going to find males who's going to make the trip, not old people, normally young males. Women have children. They normally don't take those journeys. Even if you analyze, for example, antebellum slavery, the vast majority of those who risk escape and who fled were young males of the same age. But they're using this to sort of paint some kind of a picture. But outside of their ages, notice what's happening. There is immediately an antagonism between the citizens and the migrants, in particular the immigrants. So they were talking about how they of all such and such ages, okay? But I just wanted to let you know that's normally the age of those who are willing to take the risk for journeys like that.
And let's take a good look at the clientele, shall we? Men, all fighting age men, not a woman or child in sight. The time was around 1 a.m. Why did the Home Office move these men into the Britannia at 1 a.m? What kind of time is that? Some may think it was done deliberately, perhaps, to ensure it went without anybody noticing. And by the way, the government's doing this at the very same time they're censoring migrant hotel footage on social media under the Online Safety Act. And what's even worse is they're doing it at the same time of setting up a so-called elite Home Office department to monitor social media looking for critics of migrant hotels. I think just so they can grass you up to social media companies and ask them to ban your accounts. So, as I said, the government is literally spying on you at the same time as lying to you.
So his argument is that the government is trying to censor you or censor the people or sort of keep under wraps this influx of migrants and immigrants. Well, when you're saying the government, things get lost in obscurity. We're looking at those who sit in parliament. Those who sit in parliament are normally working for those who own the resources, the large time capitalists. Okay, that's the way it is here in America. That seemed to be the way it has developed throughout the world. The good part is that the people, once they begin to be educated and they realize how the so-called people who sit in seats of government and the rich class, how they're able to do things like this, you're going to learn they're able to do it. Once we learn that, it's just because of our unorganization and our consent. Okay. Those are other teachings, but we will get into it. Right now, we just want to show that, listen, yes, you have those who sit in parliament. You have those who sit in Congress who want to bring in cheaper labor. Period. They want to bring in cheaper labor. So while they're bringing in cheaper labor from other countries, cheap labor, they're not only bringing in cheap labor, but they're uprooting these people because at the same time, in the second and third world countries in particular, they're also taking their resources and land. Once you take your resource and land, then what do? You have to flee to some kind of refuge to survive. You have to go where the bread is. You have to go where they say opportunity is. So therefore, you have more people who's taking the risk to travel to find opportunity. Why? Because their land is being exploited. For example, Puerto Rico exploited. You look at all of these lands in South America, Asia, Europe, the masses who are exploited by those who are rich, who have maneuvered to put their puppets in office. But remember, the seats of power isn't monarchical. The seats of power are transient in the sense where they always move in, meaning people do not have permanent seats unless we allow them to have permanent seats. If they can walk into office without resistance, then they could sit there for 15, 20, 30 years. How can they do that? Depoliticize the public, where the public is on the sideline complaining and they're not in the battlefield in the world of politics, taking part and assuming their right in the political process. The rich put you to sleep, They tell you to go to the games. They tell you to go have fun, go have a beer, go watch the Super Bowl, go to the amusement parks, have fun on Donut Day, Christmas, or whatever holidays that they try to sort of distract the public with. And in the meanwhile, while they're distracting the public with other, other things to occupy their time, they'll let you also know that those who's coming in, migrants who's coming in, so you will not work with them to understand their plight. They're not going to work with you to understand yours. If they met with hostility, then they know there is a clash. Now, here we have the UK arguing the same thing that America is arguing about the migrants or immigration. He says, your government is lying to you. All right. I'm going to play a little bit more of the clip to show you how the hostility of the citizens who are already citizens towards the migrants or immigrants, how it can cause more turmoil.
But what does this kind of contempt towards the electorate create? Well, it creates anger, worry, concern, and distrust of authority. Distrust of the very people meant to have our best interests at heart. So while this was going on at the Britannia last night, today I went down to another migrant hotel at London's Barbican, where there have been dozens of arrests and charges in recent months for a range of alleged crimes linked to hotel migrants staying there. This woman I'm about to show you now is called Tony, and she told me why her community wanted the hotel shut down.
Here today?
Because I live in the local community and I'm concerned over my children's safety. I'm concerned about my old age pensioners who can't come into the local square where we've always communed. This is our cafe.
So this is the square here? Just tell us, describe for viewers what's here, what's around here.
Fish and chip shop. They also, that's our George, and he opened a restaurant that's gone completely down the hill because obviously it was a thriving hotel at one stage. Now, as we know, it's just besieged.
So that's a great point. So because there's no genuine guests there's no tourists staying here, the local businesses are losing out because people aren't eating, people aren't going to the restaurants.
In the parks anymore, but you can't. How can you play with your kids on a paddling pool when you've got 4 or 5 men that you don't know glaring at you? They're disrespectful. They've got a different ideology.
Tony, I've been with the Antifa Stand Up to Racism lot in the past couple of hours.
They're not local.
They've been bussed in, and also they're fully masked. But they're calling you lot racist. They're calling you lot bigoted. What's your response?
We're a diverse community, so how can they call us racist? And I don't like the fact that these people are coming into our community, telling us what we've got to put up with, and it's our kids' children's safety that's paramount.
So again, they worried about the safety. They worried about crime, which is warranted. And they also mentioned Antifa. Antifa is a group that they're what you call anarchists. And theoretically speaking, if you are a true studier of Karl Marx or the socialists, if you're really a studier of that, I know how they branded Marxism and they associate Antifa and the anarchists with Marxism. But not quite. In fact, not at all. Their tactics are terrible. However, those are other discussions. Their tactics will do nothing but create more of a police state and more hostility with the populace because they're running off of emotions. If you're going to talk about organizing in order to bring about a just society and a distribution of resources where all can be taken care of comfortably, you can't do it the way in which they have been doing it. But that's a whole nother discussion. All right. So what I want to look at today, now this was going on in the UK, but this is what we have also in Ottawa, Canada. Let's see.
Prince Rupert is home to the 3rd largest port in the country. Good unionized jobs, according to business leaders, allow young people to move up quickly and afford a house within 3 years. But they say the local economy is at risk because of federal government changes to immigration and work permit policies.
Right now, right?
See, now we're going to get the other side of this. In one sense, we get the citizen aspect and how they're afraid of the community going down, the migrants or the immigrants who's coming in. And some of them are criminals, and that need to be dealt with. We're not dismissing that. It's not one or the other. They have rightful concerns. But we want to look at both sides of this and how those who sit in seats of power can sit back and watch the people destroy themselves. When you have the foundational Black Americans, many of them, I get it. I understand your position. But it's needful for them also to understand the global politic of the removal of people from their ancestral homes, the global politic of the exploitations of lands that is the driving force of people leaving their homes. I would deal with this as well. I want to just read this excerpt out of The Violent Technologies of Extraction. And what it says here is describing what they will call the world eater. And we're talking about the development of the world. We're going to get into that too, extraction of resources, because we have a big race that is taking place to rob, or should I say, continue to bleed the earth out of the resources in Antarctica. But we're going to get into that as well, because this is something that need to be dealt with. Unless the people understand and organize that our planet, in pursuit of the capitalist mode of production, is going under harsh treatment, and it's fighting back. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we have the weather, the destruction of the weather, when we have dearth and lack of rain in certain areas, the whole earth, this delicate ecosystem which sustains life, is at risk. And if it's all about making a dollar, your dollar is worthless if the resources are not intact. So the highest priority of the world eater, and this is Dunlop and Jacobson, they argue the highest priority of the world eater, or the imperative of techno-capitalist industrial progress, is thus acquiring, transforming, and controlling natural resources. States, militarization, and consequently capitalist economics could not exist without natural resources. So this is their pursuit. So looking for resources, which is the ores, timber, oil, natural gas, and let us not forget the most valuable resource, the human resource. And for all of the developed countries, you and I are to be challenged because of the maximizing of profits. Some have argued that the developed countries' workers are too expensive. To combat that, we will bring in migrants or immigrants. Now we have here to show you how the immigrant, their place in the developed world are for cheap labor. And we're going to get a glimpse of this in this account here.
Prince Rupert is home to the third largest port in the country. Good unionized jobs, according to business leaders, allow young people to move up quickly and afford a house within 3 years. But they say the local economy is at risk because of federal government changes to immigration and work permit policies.
Right now, we have 2 permits that are under siege.
Temporary foreign workers, which fuel the service industry in the northwest coast city of 14,000, including 90% of the staff at John Farrell's sushi restaurant, and international students, which he says are no longer coming through the college.
That pipeline was cut by the federal government.
In 2024, Immigration Canada capped study permit applications to ease the strain on housing, healthcare, and other services. A measure it says has reduced the number of incoming international students by about 40%, while employers can hire no more than 10% of their workforce through the TFW program. and workers can only stay for 1 year instead of 2.
We're capped. We can't bring any more workers in. So once a worker leaves, we're just that much further down the hole.
The domestic workforce just simply is not available.
Temporary foreign workers make up more than 60% of the workforce at the local McDonald's.
These individuals are not just filling positions, they're the reason our business is able to operate day in and day out.
At Ray Peterson's construction company, most of the employees are foreign workers on temporary visas.
My business would disappear overnight, and all my customers would be disappointed if we didn't have the guys we need to deliver the service they need to get the work done.
If we don't stem these policies, then really our town's going to collapse.
The community is asking the feds to reconsider the impact of these changes on what some consider Canada's friendliest little city.
Given the immense wealth that we generate in the Northwest, it doesn't make economic sense for Ottawa to be punishing us so severely.
Kristen Robinson, Global News.
All right. Now you have the other side. You have the business owner, small-time capitalists, who's showing us the other side of the migrant and the immigrant. And then we have the side of the citizen, who's arguing about their resources and their neighborhoods and their quality of life. Now, in between both, somewhere in between the two is the truth. So we're going to close for today's session. We must consider what is happening globally. And instead of the immigrants being an enemy to the FBA'S, and now the FBA'S are enemy to immigrants, which are called foundational Black Americans. And all of a sudden now you have this antagonism between ethnicities that arise. And while in the midst of the fight, the masses of the workers are undivided. The masses of the workers are also, they're losing leverage, because if they're divided, they can't stand against the real exploiters and the real cause of why it is difficult for us to have good qualities of life. I'm Brother Judah from the NMP, the Nazarene Messianic Party. I like to give appreciation to all those who have taken a time out to analyze our session for today. We will continue it with more discussions. I wanted to follow this up so we can put the immigrants into their proper context. And just like the migrants who migrated from the South up north, they went up for the same reasons. They were looking for a better quality of life. So now we must begin to not just look at our own grievances, but now we must look at the grievances of others if we're going to straighten out this problem that we face. As long as we're divided, we will always be manipulated and exploited. With that, I'm going to close out for today's session. And God willing, we will return again as we further discuss political issues and hopefully bring forth political education. And so we can help one another. The global working class people helping one another, so we can all have a decent quality of life. Visit our webpage if you want more information, and you could reach out to us. And with that, I'll say peace to all those who are seeking for a better quality of life for the human beings and our fellow laborers and working class people across the globe.